These are 5 habits that have drastically improved my sleep and my life for the better. In the last year, I've definitely become more spiritual and in tune with myself, really just working on different things that honestly protect my peace, make me feel my best, help me sleep better, and I wanted to change these habits that have really made a big difference in my life. Sometimes it's the littlest changes that make the biggest difference. It's not like you have to do this full 180 and make this huge big change and go meditate in Bali to have a more peaceful life. It's just little habits you can incorporate. For me personally, these things have genuinely made a difference. So let's go through them. The first thing I want to share is not watching any more scary movies. Honestly, anything that just makes me feel intense or gets my adrenaline up or makes me feel dark or has any darkness to it. And this was something I intuitively always felt, but sometimes my friends would be like, come on, watch this movie with us, or I would just tell myself I was being too sensitive, but I always really had a hard time with negative movies. Even things that just made me feel bad, like when there was just darkness, not necessarily a scary movie. Once I immersed myself into health and wellness, this has been the last 12, 15 years of my life now, I really started learning about ancient wellness. And when I was reading about Ayurveda, one thing they say, and that I learned is, when you're watching something on TV, when you're consuming something, whether it's music, TV, anything in front of you, even if it's fake, your brain and body does not know the difference between a fake movie that causes trauma and something you're actually experiencing. Because when you're watching it, think about it, you're scared, your adrenaline's up, your heart's racing. That's still a stressful response in your body. So it actually does almost the same thing, or even the same thing as it would if you were actually experiencing that. And we all know how bad for the body stress is. So I've just learned that it can make me feel really tense and actually affect my body negatively. So ever since I learned that, I've just become more validated and confident in my intuition of not wanting to consume these things. So I really will not do it, especially before bed. For anyone who's a meditator, right before you go to sleep or right when you wake up in the morning, your subconscious is the most malleable or influenced. So that's why meditation early or late at night really impacts you the most. So if you're laying in bed and you're watching the news and it's all these traumatic things happening, or you're watching a scary movie, those things are also going to get etched into your brain. My dreams would be affected that way. So that's one thing I've incorporated. I'm so happy with it. And also, ever since I've shared this on social media, so many people commented same for me, I don't like it, and I don't think I'm alone on this. Also, in general, I'm just conscious of everything I'm consuming, because when you're listening, watching, everything is a memory in your brain. Of course, there's some podcasts or movies or stand-up comedy I like that just makes me laugh, and it's not always, necessarily inspiring or anything like that, but at least in the morning and late at night when I'm listening to an audiobook, when I'm listening to a podcast, when I'm reading a book, I want to make sure that it's something that really makes me feel inspired, uplifted, and calm, so to say. Currently, I'm listening to Deepak Chopra's new title on Audible. It's called Living in the Light, and I'm super excited because I'm actually prepping for our podcast. He is coming on as a guest, and we're going to interview him, which you can also listen to our podcast on Audible. This book is amazing because it really teaches you the core meaning of yoga. I feel like most people look at yoga as just a workout or a lazy workout. As some of my friends say, they're like, what a waste of time. I'd rather go on the treadmill. And I'm like, there's so much more to it than that. It almost preps your mind and your knowledge for the yoga practice. And it's a really good one. I'd highly recommend. I also do really love Audible because it helps me avoid blue light at night. I can just put whatever title I want on, listen, and then put my phone down. I don't have to stare and be scrolling. And, it's so much better than social media at the end of the night to really unwind and just inspire my mind. There's just such a wide range of titles to choose from. You can choose inspiration, business, celebrity memoirs, whatever your vibe is. And I just like audiobooks in general because you can listen while you're working out, while you're cooking. I love listening while I cook. And I just also have this thing where I don't like to scroll social media in the morning. I'll get into that in my other tips, but I like it as the thing I do in the morning before I get started, or again, before I go to bed. And if you haven't tried Audible, new members can get a 30-day free trial. As an Audible member, you can choose one title a month to keep from the entire catalog, including the latest bestsellers and new releases. Members also get full access to a growing selection of included audiobooks, Audible originals, and podcasts. And if you do want to try Audible, you can text Mona to 500-500 for a free trial. I will also put it below in the description so that you don't miss out. And thank you again, Audible, for sponsoring this video and supporting my non-exposure to blue light at night. This tip I've incorporated actually over the last 3 years. I don't like to look at blue light or scroll social media pretty much after 8:30 p.m., at least a couple hours before bed. And I think there's multiple facets to this. Number one, there's so much data on blue light not being the best for you in the evening because it keeps you awake and it messes with your circadian rhythm. Blue light in the morning is good, which is why the natural sky in the morning is a little more blue. And whereas in the evening, it turns into that golden light as the sun is setting. I always love actually relating it to nature because then it just makes so much sense because nature knows everything. So you can either do blue light blockers at night, but I don't even like to do that because I do find that even if I had blue light blockers on and I was just scrolling social media, it's even that. It's kind of the just mindless looking, having your mind just run and be busy. I've liked to really let it calm down so that I get a better sleep. And I've definitely noticed this improve my sleep because I was always a really easy sleeper until, I don't know, a few years ago, I noticed it was a little bit harder for me to fall asleep. So that's when I started incorporating these things. Before I had any issues sleeping, I didn't even think about it. And I was just on Instagram in bed scrolling until I fell asleep. It was the first thing I did in the morning. Now I can't even imagine. I also don't like doing this right when I wake up in the morning. The blue light isn't really a thing in the morning, but in terms of opening social media and looking at emails, my phone is on airplane and I do my morning routine, my meditation. I really do a beautiful, ritual with myself, making tea or making a hot beverage. I like to exercise, move my body. And then while I'm working out, this is also another time I like to listen to a title on Audible or just listen to some audio that either motivates me or inspires me for the day. Kind of the same how at night I don't like to watch anything scary. This goes, or listen to anything intense or just busy. It's I don't want the gossip nonsense that can be fun sometimes, the stuff that sometimes we just want to literally be entertained, but I don't like that in the morning and I don't like it late at night. So I will do that while I'm on the treadmill. And overall, I just feel better when I'm not opening social media or anything like that until I do all these things. I take care of myself. I have my own self-care routine. And then I'm okay, now time to turn on my work hat, check your emails, check your text messages, get going, and then you have designated time for it. This has really helped me create boundaries in my life and just not feel like I'm always going, because just because we have cell phones doesn't mean we have to always be available to everybody. Speaking of sleeping better, another thing I've incorporated is pretty much cutting out caffeine except for matcha, and even matcha I do not drink past 3 or 3:30 p.m. So I experimented with reducing caffeine when I was just wanted to balance my hormone levels. I was just working on my overall wellness and was let me just see how this feels. Really interesting because for the first 2 weeks, I was exhausted all day. I couldn't believe that my body was addicted to it like that. But then after that, I got really used to it. And everything from coffee, I drink decaf Swiss water coffee. So Swiss water process is a non-chemical way to decaffeinate because most of the time they use chemical solvents. With my tea, I found companies will do CO2 decaf, and you can look for it and now you'll see it on the back of certain tea boxes. And I really just cut caffeine out. I have this big belief that coffee is really a lot of times about the aroma and it can be placebo, except for the anxiety and jitters you get from the caffeine. When I do have it, sometimes it can really make me feel anxious and jittery. Matcha doesn't do it to me as much, I believe, because of the L-theanine that's in it that kind of balances it out, which is why it's a little bit more of a sustained energy and it doesn't make you feel jittery. But regardless, I stopped drinking caffeine after 3. Even for people, just as a tip, I know sometimes I've heard people say, I can drink caffeine at 8 p.m. and go to bed just fine. I recently learned on the Huberman Lab podcast, he's so knowledgeable about sleep. He shared that even if you are drinking caffeine and still sleeping, you're actually not getting a restorative sleep. So you might feel like you're asleep, but you're not going as deep into REM sleep, and it's just still not as much rest for your body. So overall, it is still a better idea to at least limit caffeine after a certain hour. Another thing that makes a big difference is eating dinner earlier. And this is funny because I feel like, I don't know, LA and New York culture, which are two cities I've lived in my whole adult life, a lot of times it's about like this really late dinner. And I used to go to dinners at like 9, 9:30, 10, and just eat later. It's better for your digestion. A lot of studies have shown that it's better for your sleep if you give yourself at least a couple hours. I like to really give myself like 3 hours because that's what I found for me makes me feel the best in the morning. If I eat a lot and then go right to bed, even within the hour, I just feel really full when I wake up and I feel a little extra bloated. And interestingly enough, I end up being more hungry in the morning. I don't know if you've experienced that, but that definitely happens to me. So I like to eat dinner a little earlier. And let's say my night is going a little later. If I have to work a little later than I want, I'll even stop to eat dinner. I love like an early bird special, like 5:30 or 6 is kind of my sweet spot to eat. And then I like, just feeling better in the morning. If you want to try this, I'd recommend even just trying moving it back like 30 minutes and then another 30 minutes, and you'll start to get used to it. Also, if you feel like you are someone who snacks at night in bed, you could try a little bit of herbal tea. Warm water with ginger and cinnamon, even like fresh ginger grated in, it just feels very like warming and cozy at night over like a lemon water. Lemon water feels a little more morning vibes to me personally, so you could also try something like that. And lastly, when it comes to working out, I've found that working out at night can make sleep a little bit worse. It almost like wakes you up and gives you just too much energy at night, whereas working out in the morning is so much better, sets the tone for my day. It kind of wakes me up if I'm exhausted, and then I go get my workout and I kind of just feel amazing by the time I'm done and I'm just ready to start my day. The only workout I would ever do at night would be like a very slow, calming yoga session, maybe like dark room, light a few candles, maybe like a little yin yoga, just a little more like stretching and long holds. But besides that, in terms of like actual cardio or HIIT or weight training, Pilates, I prefer to do it in the morning, and I have found that it's made me sleep better. I hope you enjoyed this video. I will say, as you get older, you do realize how important sleep is and the value of sleep. So if you are having trouble sleeping, I would recommend trying some of these tips. And speaking of, I'm gonna go to bed right now.